That is right. We have the global report by SmartRecruiters with Allyn. Great to see you, Allyn. How are you?
I am fabulous, and I just figured out how to turn my mute off. That was almost
We were
dear
gonna
Lord.
have like a 2024 Zoom moment there where I'm
We
like,
were just
mute.
about. I was almost there. I was like, oh damn it. So
Saved by whatever this what is it? EV Mux. I love this platform.
yeah,
Why don't you give us a quick intro on Smart
yeah,
Recruiters and we will get into one of our favorite segments.
absolutely. So for those who don't know me, and I can't believe you don't, but if you don't, dear Lord, help you get to know me. My name is I am over here at Smart Recruiters. Smart Recruiters is a next generation applicant tracking system and talent platform. And we're often moving in. We've been spending a lot of time over the last 6 months to a year trying to understand what's going on in the world of work because we believe there's a big transition happening. And so we're starting to engage the world in that conversation. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, let's talk about it. Well, I know right now, obviously in the U.S., we have it's like election season and politics, as we know, just drives so much feelings and emotions either way. So what are you seeing out there, even just from a global perspective, when it
Yeah, so
comes to
this
these
is
conversations?
right. Absolutely. So listen, just if we think about the US, the amount of tension and anxiety in the workplace is on the rise. We're seeing new research and data points coming out of the Pew Research Group. Sherm has been doing a lot of stuff on this. You can decide your opinion on that as you go forward. But nonetheless, there's a lot of conversations going on. Just in general, it is a polarizing moment. It has been. There is a lot of conflict that's arising. There's a lot for kind of HR to navigate in this space. We're seeing, by the way, it's not just in the US, however, globally, there are a lot of elections happening, and there's a similar sort of push and pull. I think what's unique about the US is even though we talk about having a very kind of professional workforce framework, we actually have a very vocal and I would say less formal work framework, right? So people are much more comfortable. They hang out with each other after work. You see a lot more kind of dynamic conversations happening around about what's happening in the news around them. And today that news is around politics and it causes conflict and angst and stress. And we're seeing downstream implications of that, right? It hits
How do you,
productivity.
how do you how do you coach people? Like, what advice do you have for like HR leaders then, and how to like even navigate and have these conversations? Because I did a poll recently where I asked like, should we have these conversations at work? And it was seemed
Yeah,
like a lot of people said no, but I don't think that's true. I think people are having these internal
that's
conversations, right?
Well, I think that's the crux of it, right? One of the biggest challenges that HR has today in the U.S. market, from my perspective, is there is what we say and what actually is happening, and I think
Yeah.
there are two very different sides of the fence. This is happening particularly around these conversations around the political landscape, and so I think HR is better suited. Helping people understand how to navigate those conversations rather than focusing on trying to ban conversations, right? Because it doesn't work, right? People don't not have the dialogue or have the impact or have the conversation because these are highly emotional topics. People are very vested in their perspective and their opinions, and the biggest skill HR can work on with teams right now is helping them understand how to express themselves without creating angst or conflict across their organizations. But there's a second tier to this, which is these conversations also not only cause strife in the immediate workplace, but they have impacts to the larger brand, right? So there's kind of two frames of that conversation we need to talk about with our teams. One is how do you be respectful, right? How can you have opinion and dialogue and do it in a respectful way? And kind of what are the boundaries around that? But in addition, there's a difference between a conversation I can have with my team or with my buddy who I go off and have a beer with after work, and the conversation I can have as a representative of the company. And how does that have to show up and what does that look like? And the worst thing that can happen, it happens way too often, is companies don't have a perspective on that. They don't have that conversation out there. And people run off at the mouth, and then the company has to navigate that, right? And companies are horribly bad at that sort of PR. They don't know how to navigate it.
Well, it sounds like so they need to facilitate the conversations in the right
Absolutely.
way. So is that through like ERG groups or like What do you see as
I think you can do it through ERG groups. I think you can do it by working directly with frontline managers and giving them the tools for how to, um, I would say, how to negotiate or manage those conversations inside their group settings. But I think you've got to take it as close to actual teams as possible. So anything that's and this is a personal opinion I have in mind, but we see lots of research that talks about this. Anything from an HR level that is a dictator mandate coming from above usually falls very, very flat when it comes down to what's actually happening on the ground. And these
mm,
sorts of conversations are the types that we don't want people pretending aren't happening when they actually are, because it can have big impacts.
I wonder how many HR leaders and just people leaders in general are kind of more leaning to what you just said, like almost
Right.
pretending like these conversations aren't happening.
Yeah, they're putting our blinders on, right? And we're all pretending it's not happening. Or we said, listen, we put the mandate out there. We told you all,
Mm.
right? That in the workplace, we do not have this dialogue. We do not have these discussions. We have and they'll frame it under, we have a respectful workplace, or any of those sorts of elements in that space, right? But what that gets translated down to for people is that their organizations, their leaders are disconnected, right?
Big
And
surprise.
surprise, surprise, the people who are making decisions may not actually know what's going on the ground.
Mm.
And I also think that if you don't address it, you are putting yourself in a position to be blindsided, because if you pretend it's not there, it's going to it's going to sneak up on you, right? Because it's happening. There's just no, I guess the big message here is, guess what, guys? It's happening. All the research out there says these conversations are happening, and it's up to every team to figure out what is that threshold that you can navigate inside your company dynamics that allows you to help support people through those conversations without it becoming an issue or a thing.
So we took internally how we manage these conversations. What about from an employer brand, EVP perspective? What's your advice there? Because again, I think 2020, I saw the most companies I think I've ever seen like take stances on issues, and and then some of them will take stances and then they go back, and it's like it's hard to kind of navigate it. So what's your advice from like just an EVP standpoint?
Yeah, so I think the reason you saw that, by the way, in 2020, and we've continued to see it kind of progressively out there, is there is a an understanding that the employer message, right, or the message, your kind of employer brand, or even your overall just company consumer brand, in today's environment is very connected to how people perceive how are you going to fall, whether it be on issues of social context, whether it be on economic, like people are looking for some sort of non-robotic response, right? So what companies did is they immediately said, okay, I'm going to pivot. I'm going to make sure that I'm like showing up in that way, right? So I mean, my favorite is there is not a month that goes by that isn't the month that belongs to something, and companies who really have no interaction or connection to it whatsoever suddenly blast all over their LinkedIn pages, right? We all know that, right?
Change the profile photo.
Change the profile photo. That's all
There
we
it
need
is.
to do.
We're done.
Boom. I now understand. I put a new profile photo up and I'm engaged and I'm connected. And I think that is, people are seeing through that. It has a very negative connotation now for most people from a brand perspective.
Hmm.
So, what I recommend to PR teams, what I recommend to brand teams, to EVP teams, is to be authentic to who you are as a company. And I know that sounds really vague, but it's not. Most companies today have who we are inside our walls and who we are outside our walls, right? This perception that we're always creating perception for people so that they can react to us. Your employer brand at the end of the day is a reflection of who you actually are and how you show up every day as a company with your employees and your teams and your workforce, right? That if you do the good work there, show up authentically there, it will translate outside, right? And we're seeing more and more people are looking for that sort of authentic reflection and connection. They want it to be around things like, there are key issues. We know there are key issues you need to be able to think about. How are you showing up in terms of the climate, the environment? That's hot at the moment, right? People want to understand that and connect to it. How do I, when I show up and work with this company, what is that reflection on who I am in relationship to a variety of different issues, right? The things that are important to me.
I mean, flexible work schedules, where do we get work done? Like
Right.
what are the mentality? And again, this is a huge one. It just seems to be a never-ending debate on work from home, remote, hybrid, all of this, and you see leadership. I mean, I've seen it
Yep.
recently in the news where an executive will say something and then they'll get backlash and then they kind of change what they say. And in some ways, you're like, look, this is part of your EVP is say what you mean and just stick with it, like for better or
Right.
worse, almost.
Right. Make it have a. It is okay. I think that there has been a. There's this weird line that we're crossing in the market today where it used to be having an opinion was shied was something that you were told not to have as a company because somebody could not like your opinion. But what that translates to, particularly as we start thinking about Gen Z, as we start thinking about some of the younger millennials, what that translates to is when you show up with no opinion, it makes it look like you are something to hide, that you are not
Mm.
showing up as authentic, right? So now you have to walk this fine line to say, how do I now have a perspective and a point of view that allows me to show up as authentic to who we are as a company and understand that that is going to sit well with some and not with others, and that requires you to be okay with not being okay in some spaces. So you've got to figure out what that is for you. In the world of remote work, and we start thinking about flexible work, now we start talking about a different dialogue and conversation, which is leadership in companies who are working from one paradigm and belief system. I'll call it a very paternal belief system, right? Which is I will set up infrastructures in order to ensure you operate and work the way I need you to so that I feel comfortable that you're going to provide for me what I need to make my company work. Versus individuals, right, who are saying, I have a life, right? I'm a unique human being, a unique individual, and I know enough about myself to know how I am most productive. And so the conversation is really shifting. It used to be about remote work, and then we went into this hybrid work bull crap, which is basically just corporate's version of trying to rein in remote work, which isn't landing
By the
well.
way, I hate hybrid because it's like I just need one setup and
Pick a
like
thing,
I can't
right?
do the
Right. To
whole.
me, that's the perfect example of exactly where that whole PR conversation went to, right? We're going to put a foot in both worlds and say we like everybody. It
Yeah.
doesn't work that way, right? Pick a thing,
Yeah.
right? Um, but people are understanding the conversation is now becoming about not just where I work from, but how I work, when I work, and how I show value. And it's part of that natural progression, moving away from I am a member of this company to I am an individual with skills and capabilities, and I am providing to this company for a period of time.
Reid Hoffman had that prediction about the 9 to 5 ending in 2035, I think was the prediction. Thoughts on that?
It's coming, and I would be
Mm.
surprised if 2030. Well, okay, I always say this. I make things happen faster than they're actually going to happen. I think that's probably a very realistic prediction,
Yeah.
and we're starting to see it already, right? We're starting
100%.
to see it happen, and it will happen quietly. There is the conversation all of us are having, right? Like we like to discuss all of these big concepts, but
Good
in
podcasts
right
material.
podcast, and we'll record some stuff. But on a day to day level, people in their jobs are already starting to make these things happen, and they don't know how to label it. It just is how they're evolving their work, right? Um, a great example of that is the when everybody started to wake up to the idea of, oh my goodness, perhaps people are quiet vacationing. Again, another bullshit term, right? But at the end of the day, it comes down to people will figure out a way to make their work environment work for them, which is what the main shift is in mindset.
100%. I know one other
Yeah.
topic that is huge right now, um, immigration and, like, how you handle immigration, and I know one of the focal points is, "Hey, we have a talent shortage, there's jobs that need to be filled." So talk to us about, like, from a global perspective, how some of these policies
Right.
could actually impact, genuine needs that we have and what your perspective on that is, what you're seeing out there.
So this is a huge conversation that's happening.
Just, like, in 1 minute. Just kidding.
Right. In 1 minute, let's talk about it, right? Huge conversation happening. Here's what people need to understand. All the way at the level of the UN, when we're talking about the International Organization for Migration, they are starting to have deep conversations. Why this is important to you as a recruiter is because those conversations are now starting to become not just about what type of migration do we need and what type of immigration do we need, but starting to understand some root cause issues around things like how we set up taxation and work structures inside countries to allow people to navigate and to migrate successfully, for companies to hire people who are moving from one country to another, or remote working, or shifting and working from various different locations, right? It's all connected together. This whole story is connected together. People want to work where they want to work, how they want to work, and when they want to work. And the infrastructures that are set up at a global level, at each individual country level, are not set up to support those sorts of work conditions. And the root of it, they're talking about it at the migration level, but it's really about thinking about immigration law, thinking about the ability to connect people to jobs and allowing people to work across borders. So a lot of work happening in that space. I think we're going to see a lot of shifting in it as we go forward.
100%. Well, you've got a big event coming up in Amsterdam in September
We do.
11th. So is this going to be what the conversation is around hiring success? Like, are these going to be the topics that you guys are discussing? Give us an overview of
Yeah,
that.
we are going to go and have those conversations. Listen, we are bringing. For those who don't know about him, there's a gentleman out there who is probably one of the brightest minds in digital anthropology, and talking about the impact of AI, not just in HR, but in the larger ecosystem and what's happening in that space. His name is Brian Solis. He'll be kicking us off. Really
Shout out to
talk.
Brian.
Brian, love Brian. So excited. I can't even tell you. I'm like geeking out. It's like he's going to be amazing. And really frame a conversation that's not about just TA or HR, but a conversation that's about what's happening in the world. And then we're going to progress that throughout the entire day to talk about, so how do we respond to that? And what does that mean to have practical solutions, not just from a technology perspective, but from a process perspective, from a strategy perspective. How does that show up, and how do we show up in those spaces? So Matt Alder's going to be there running a panel. We got John Stanners, who's coming in to talk about the impact of the future of work to TA. And we have another great individual, if people haven't heard about him, Eddie Panero, who's going to be coming in and just hopefully motivating everybody and giving them some tips to move forward. And if you show up, you get to go on the boat and have some drinks. It's a
Cannot
little
beat
dirty.
that. I mean, Amsterdam's
So,
beautiful. Well,
yeah.
Allyn, it's so great to have you on here. And I would just say, if you're not following Allyn on LinkedIn, you're posting a lot of really quality video content, and definitely advise following and connecting. Where else can people find you? Where can they find out about Smart Recruiters?
So obviously the easiest one, guys, is smartrecruiters.com. Head on over, and you
You
want
heard
to,
it here.
yeah, you heard it here, and you want to get over there now and start watching.
I love it.
It's going to be a really fun fall. So see you all
Um,
soon.
Amazing. Well, we will see you next week
Awesome.
um, for some more
Yeah.
conversation. Thank you so much for all the value here, and we'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Joel.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.